Hei, før dere hører på denne podcasten her, så vil jeg bare informere om at lyden ble ikke helt slik jeg hadde håpet på. Hva som skjedde vet jeg ikke, men Skype så ikke ut til samarbeidet den dagen jeg skulle gjøre dette her. Så dere må kanskje vri litt frem og tilbake på volumknotten her når dere hører denne podcasten. Men uansett, dette er en podcast med intervju med Jason Reed, så jeg håper dere liker den fra Trondplot Productions. Ha en ellers fin dag. God dag, dette er Trond Atnetveiten for Trondplot Productions. Det er andre del av Normal sin podcastserie på Høy Tid, og denne gangen skal vi snakke med Jason Reed fra Leap UK. Hello Jason.
Hi there, how's it going?
It's going great here. It's cold like ever. Norwegian summer, only grey.
That's pretty much a British summer as well. We pretty much had complete rainfall in a week this year.
Oh, a week? Well, I live in Bergen, so we had 5 years ago a record on 100 days in a row.
Wow, yeah, I think that just about beats us, I think.
So, you are a writer, blogger, film producer. The film we're going to talk about a little later. You're blogging for the Huffington Post,
Yeah.
the UK edition. You also guest blog for Virgin, Political Co UK, The Independent, Sunday Picture, London Real TV. Oh my God, yes, BBC, Channel 4, Huffington Post Live, and everything really there is.
The way I describe it is basically a drug policy marketeer. I think that's the most succinct way of saying what I do.
But like you are everywhere there is. So, well, I talked about people in the Leap or the American organization, but a little about you. How did you come to work for Leap?
I started blogging, just doing like a blog spot, and realised that not many people were doing entry-level drug policy, so a lot of it was academically based, and to me, it was going over my head. So with a basic understanding of what was going on, I could only imagine what a layman was going through. So I decided to branch out, did a bit more writing, my blog took off, got in some combative debates with some prominent columnists here, which got me some attention. And then I was one of the first ones to join up to the Huffington Post UK edition to blog about drug policy. And from there, the exposure just took off because the Huffington Post really did well in this country. I don't want to say it's a left-wing leaning, but it kind of is. There's no getting away from the fact that you've got, in this country, still very much left and right-leaning publications, and Huffington Post is going to be on the left of that spectrum. And because I was one of the first ones to join the Huffington Post, it just got that spread, and they got behind some of the articles that I was doing. And then I realised that I wanted to do more than just preach to the converted, because a lot of times in drug policy you can just be within this echo chamber where we're just discussing it amongst ourselves. So I saw Leap in the US, and I thought, well, there's not going to be many people that aren't going to listen to a bunch of police officers, intelligence officers, military. These are the ones that have been on the front line of drug policy, fighting the war on drug, literally. So I inquired to see if they had a UK branch, and at that point they really only had a couple of speakers and a Facebook page. So I just said, well, I'd like to get involved just to volunteer my services, and then started building it, and a few more people started getting on board. And then from there it just took off, and now we've got, well, I can't even count the amount of speakers we've got now, and we only really officially, I use that in inverted commas, launched in February. We were going a long time before that, but we operated under the global Leap banner. Yeah. But to get some really good coverage and leverage, it really does help to have regionalised branches so that, we know our media, we know the way that our cultural system works, so that we can do things within that. And that's what we did. We ended up launching in February in the Houses of Parliament, and it's been going since then.
But it's the same problem of your country as it is mine, because I always talk with some law enforcement people behind closed doors, and say, yeah, we agree with you, but we can't say it because it's our career.
Yeah.
Is the same problem in Britain?
It is, but it's just starting to turn now, because strangely we had this when the coalition government came in 2010 of Conservatives and Liberal Democrats, they brought in this new role called a PCC, which is a Police and Crime Commissioner, which sounds very Batman, and it is. It's like an elected person that heads up constabularies, so regional branches of the police. That role, on the face of it, seems like a horrific idea. To have a politicised role within the police, it just doesn't sound very good.
No, it sounds like a blast from a history of Europe we don't want to go back to.
Exactly, yeah, it really does. And with a citizen's hat on, I still object to it. But with a drug policy hat on, it actually does us some real good favours, because it means that you can properly regionalise what we're doing. Because one of the advantages that America have got that we necessarily haven't is the fact that they're state by state, so they can break down incrementally their drug policy reforms. Whereas if here, fundamentally, we're completely federal because we work on a national basis. So stripping down to these regionalised figures, it meant that we could have incremental reforms coming. So even though our government is not moving at all when it comes to drug policy reforms, we can use the position of the PCC, who are there to set priorities, there to put out a manifesto of what they want to see. We can use that role to break down and actually have some tangible reforms in place. So what we're finding is cannabis, for example. There's quite a few constabularies that are deprioritising cannabis. So we're not getting a de facto decriminalisation, but it means that a lot less people will go through the mill with regards to arrests, prosecutions. A lot of times they're still focusing on big level dealing, but with regards to possession, they've backed off. So it means that we get some really good advantages. And we found that there's one person up in the north of our country, a PCC called Ron Hogg, and he's done some brilliant work in harm reduction and drug policy reform in general. And he was the first one to go on record saying, right, we're deprioritising cannabis. We're going to make sure that we apply resources to where it needs in society. And sure enough, they've been rated the best in the country. So, but through that deprioritisation, it means that we're actually seeing better results in other areas of crime.
But you have a new government. A very conservative one.
Very.
Too much conservative for my taste, but as a member of the Liberal Party of Norway, everything is too conservative for me. But how do you think that's going to change? Because now Britain goes after the European Union and so on. What consequences would that have for the drug policy of Britain?
It is a strange time here now, it really is. No one's really quite sure what's going on. In 2010, when we had the coalition government, again, we'd never really had a coalition before, so it was new ground. And it turned out to be pretty advantageous. The Liberal Democrats that were there alongside the Conservative Party really did ameliorate the hard edge that can come in with that right-leaning government. So there was a good spread. Everybody, it was a middle ground, and the middle ground seemed to work quite well. But now, as you said, we've got this shift over to quite a right wing, and also some new figures that are coming through that aren't necessarily affable to the international perception of what we're like, and also just quite hard-edged in the way they look at it. The Prime Minister that we've got now, and again, I don't want to go straight into criticising the Prime Minister because that's not going to help us at all. We need to have good dialogue. But her track record is no getting away from. That when we released a report a few years ago called the International Comparators Report, one of the key findings of that was that if you look across all the countries, Portugal, us, you find that there's no correlation between a country's harshness of their drug laws and the level of use. So we know that drug laws don't deter use. Our Prime Minister, who was then Home Secretary, wanted to redact that. She wanted that out of the report. And there was a big fight within the government to keep that line. She wanted it out. That just gives you an indication of what we're dealing with. There was a famous quote a couple of weeks ago that one of the ministers that's now gone, he's now lost his seat in the reshuffle, called Michael Gove. He said on a live debate, well, this country is sick of experts. And that kind of wraps up what it's like in drug policy at the moment. We've had expert after expert come out in this country, really advocated for massive changes.
Because we had David Nutt here in Bergen.
Exactly, yeah.
And he got a lot of trouble. He's going to come on a later podcast. He said yes to us also. But he got a lot of trouble. What he come to, I didn't find very controversial, really. It's science. It's like climate science. It's like this is what's happening.
Yeah, and it's just bizarre. We're in this bizarre set of circumstances now where literal experts, the ones that are heading up their field, and even appointed to the government advisory, that are getting rejected their view based on prejudice, existing prejudice, and this indicates more than prominently that decisions are already made, and then evidence follows the decision making, as opposed to evidence leading the decision making. And this is the trouble that we're going to be having for a while, I think, in this country now that we've had a change in government. There's every chance that experts will get ignored, and we're just going to go in favour of what our emotive opinion takes us. And also, the media does play a massive part in how it sways public opinion.
Yeah, it does.
So we've got this crossover between what the politicians think the public want to hear and what they're led to believe through the media, and it just turns into this muddy mess.
But is it the same? Because I used to have a radio programmer in Bergen, and I got kicked out just because of mentioning the cannabis debate. Is it like that in British media too?
It still is that hard edge. We've got, if you look at the publications that we have here, the one that you'll probably hear the most is the Daily Mail. They quite often come up, and it's fairly clear that their editorial position is that they don't put out much in the way of measured responses on drug policy. But then you've got other right-leaning publications like The Sun, which is Murdoch Press, and in the past they've been very much for prohibition. But if you've looked at their editorial stance over the last few years, it's been gravitating towards a more moderate approach, even to the point of there's certainly indications of decriminalisation bias. I think it's changing. I think that my personal belief is that public does lead opinion, and they will always sway what's going on in policy making, whether it's cerebral or not. And then so if you can get a change within communities, and you can get a change within just the social construct, that's going to filter. So it's that typical response of it starts at the bottom up, not the top down.
Yeah, because for me it's often been the debate about the debate. It's like we are still debating here in Norway whether we're going to have a new debate or not. And I think for me that's absurd. I think everything can be debated. Everything could be on the table. We are debating, and we usually say like people who meaning that is like this, and people who means that is like that. It's like, how is that? Why don't you not even? I don't feel like we have even legalized the debate itself.
I completely agree with that. I think that we still haven't legitimised it. I think that it's still hush hush. You know, don't talk about it. It's drugs. It's in that bracket of dirty, and we can't. And it's difficult because I imagine you and I are both the same in the sense that we're quite used to talking about drugs. We've got a circle of friends where it's a discussion topic, so we're desensitised to it. You know, if we hear the word drugs, it just automatically triggers our interest because that's what we're doing. But then I've had conversations around family members, around extended family, and you start talking about drugs, you can see them actively recoil. You know, it's frightening to them. It's embarrassing to have that word come up, and I think we're getting better, but I don't think we're there in the sense that we're managing to really pitch to the ears that it's needed yet.
Half of the people, when I mention to my family, are you using drugs? Do you have a drug problem? No, I don't. I don't nearly drink at all. My biggest addiction is coffee, and I can't get enough of coffee. But that's still legal. But that is the debate, really.
Yeah, and this is what we're finding here, is that if you can get these hooks that can get people interested, so whether it be I know that it can be quite a jaded view, but if you can get celebrity figures to just kind of start pushing it a little bit, which we are finding now. And Russell Brand, for example, is a contentious figure. Some people love him, some people hate him. But there's no denying that with the programmes that he's done, he's managed to get some extra exposures that the drug policy sector as an academic base wouldn't necessarily get to.
Yeah, we tried that in Norway, and that's just the elite, big people who just think about their own drug use. That is the answer from the police and so on. So we have a lot to do that. But I'm also going to take back a little bit in the history making here, because for me, when I look back in history, the logic behind banning cannabis and other drugs are very strange.
It is bizarre.
I think the bizarre when you go back to the 1800s. They started this just for